Now that football is a little bit on the back burner. I know we have Alabama, Tennessee coming up this weekend and some other big games, but hockey is back. The Nashville Predators on the wrong end of a 6-1 final score last night to the Edmonton Oilers. Their season is underway, and it's always great to talk hockey with our next guest. He is the leader of the Renegades of Puck podcast, my former producer over at WNSR, Nashville Sports Radio, with the Greg Pogue and Jon Burton show. Joining us from his beautiful, palatial home studio, the host of the Renegades of Puck podcast, talking all things hockey, my guy, Crazy Charlie Saunier. Charlie, good evening. Welcome back to Sportsline. It is great to have you on our airwaves as always, my friend.
Jon Burton, either I needed hockey season back in the worst way, or I needed to hear an introduction like that to get me built back up from this magical, undisclosed location somewhere within the confines of the bunker, we call it. This is the home of the Renegades of Puck podcast, and we sure do appreciate you giving us the opportunity to come on and talk a little bit of Preds hockey and talk about all things going on in the local hockey scene, because, John, as you know, it's an incredible scene, and I am fully immersed in everything that's going on around here. So let's get into it. Let's talk about it. I want to know what your questions are, because I think I've got some answers and I've got some philosophies and I've got a whole lot of things I want to say, John. So what you got for me? Let's go.
Well, I can't wait to talk puck with you, my man. But first of all, before we get into all that, I want you to tell us about the Renegades of Puck podcast. What's it all about? Where can we find it?
Love talking about the Renegades of Puck podcast. The Full Press Predators podcast is also what it's known, has gone from local to global over the last calendar year. Last year, we got to 1 million downloads and replays before the end of the year. This year, we're already over 6 million. So the Renegades of Puck are reaching a global audience now. And what are we doing? We're doing the same things we've always done. We're leading hockey trench warfare in a nuclear age. We are out there grinding it away, and we are breaking down each and every game. We're on the Nashville Predators beat, as I have been for many years now. So I am very proud to get in here in the studio after every single game, do instant recap and reactions. I do previews of every game, and we also do discussions, analysis, opinions. JB, you know how we do over here with the Renegades of Puck. We're not afraid to go there. We're not afraid to share our opinions, and we've been doing it for a long time. Everybody's got access to the same info, the same box scores, the same numbers, but nobody delivers it like the Renegades of Puck. Find us on YouTube. Find us on all of your different social media platforms, and of course, you can find the audio podcast just about everywhere. Just search Renegades of Puck, and you will find us today. And stick taps, love, and respect to each and every one of you out there for helping make the Renegades of Puck the success that it is today. JB, I'll be happy to plug all day long, but I know you want to get some real information out of me.
Definitely. And what I like about the Renegades of Puck podcast, no filler, no fluff, no company line. You know, you're not the flagship, nothing like that. You tell it like it is. All right, let's get into it. Nashville Predators. So many changes they've undergone in this calendar year alone. Of course, new GM, Barry Trotz in, David Poile out. New head coach, Andrew Burnett in, John Hines out. A couple of players that have been around for a while, making big money, but not showing a lot of production. You know, Matt Duchene gone, Ryan Johansson gone. Matthias Ekholm, who I know was a fan favorite, actually came back to Bridgestone Arena last night to play for the Oilers. You know, they've got a good mix, I think, of some young guys and some established veterans. Obviously, Yossi is still here. UC Saros is still here. Philip Forsberg is still here. Colton Sissons is still here. That guy's been in Smashville for a decade. We were just talking about that the other day. Before we get into what we've seen so far in a small sample size this season, Charlie, what did you make of the moves that the Nashville Predators made, the changes they made as they look to kind of hit the reset button a little bit and kind of reshape this franchise going forward?
John, you and I have had the beginnings of this conversation so many times over the last few years. And I think what I really think about the moves is that they came about a season, maybe even a little bit more, too late. But it's never too late to get a fresh start and get a change. And it's exactly what the Nashville Predators did. And it's happened faster than I think anyone could anticipate. Last year, the last quarter of the season, after practically blowing up what had existed since the 20 2017 Stanley Cup final run and lost against the Pittsburgh Penguins, had existed pretty much with the same exact core, and now was completely blown up with that infusion of youth coming up from Milwaukee. You saw the Nashville Predators make a run at almost getting a playoff spot. And John, I know that you felt it, I know the fans felt it. Some of that old magic, some of that old feeling was back in the building. It's not exactly that people thought they were going to win, but they were appreciating the competitive spirit and the fire that the youth was showing. And that's continued on over in this season. And all of the changes that you mentioned to set things up is exactly why we're going to talk about the Predators being off to a 1-3 start and struggling in certain areas. This was a massive, massive franchise overhaul to happen in just a matter of a couple of months. A first-time general manager, a first-time officially head coach without the interim tag. So many moving parts, new players all over the place, promotions, demotions, trades. It is truly an organization in flux, and the fact they've started 1-3 on the season is not a surprise at all.
Would you describe this, Charlie, what the Predators are doing? Is this a rebuild, a retool, a restart? What word would you use to describe what the Predators are doing right now?
Oh, this is an upcycle, John. I'm getting away from the words right here. I'll tell you, it would have been a full rebuild if the rumors that were out there over the summer about UC Saros's possible trade to the LA Kings around draft time, if that had happened, this is 100% a full rebuild. But with a Vezina caliber goaltender in net, with a Norris caliber defenseman and captain out there, and with Philip Forsberg, a one-time at least 40-goal scorer, add the additions and veterans of O'Reilly and Nyquist, you have a couple of parts that make this less of a rebuild, more of a retool. And I truly think that the Nashville Predators are opening the competitive window about 2 seasons quicker than they would have if this was a complete rebuild. Now, does that mean they're going to make the playoffs this year? Absolutely not. They're going to fight. They're going to struggle. And if they continue to develop the way Andrew Brunette wants them to play and the style they want to play and execute at a better level than they have these first 4 games, which I see the signs that they can and should here in the near future, I think that this team is going to be fun to watch. I think that the fan base is going to return. They're going to feel that new energy, and their patience is certainly going to be there. There's been a movement, John, as you know, for a couple of years for the Predators to move on to the next generation, and that meant from the top all the way down to the ice. They've managed to do that now in just a matter of a few months, and now we're seeing a product on the ice that's immediately and drastically different. It's fun. It's exciting times. It's fast. It's loud. It's a lot of things that it hasn't been in recent years. And I think that once the Predators all adjust together, including the head coach, then they're going to be able to be more competitive and put up better results on the scoreboard. What does that mean by the end of the season? It means they're probably going to be in the hunt for a playoff spot all the way until the end. Whether they make it or not, that's going to come down to just a handful of games. John, as you know, the NHL, it always does.
Yeah, it certainly does. And you mentioned Andrew Brunette bringing in a new type of style. I was watching the opening game of the season at Tampa late in the afternoon on a Tuesday, which was kind of fun to watch. Interesting game, obviously a fun game to watch. The Preds coming up short in that one, but you know, the announcers were mentioning just a different kind of style in terms of the defensemen just getting the puck to the forwards as quickly as possible. We all know Roman Josi is a fantastic offensive defenseman, nearly 100 points scored a couple of years ago. A defenseman hadn't done that in some 20 years. But the way that they were generating offense, especially in the offensive zone, with the way the guys were moving without the puck, I thought was pretty cool to watch. And if that keeps up, as you said, this could be an exciting offensive team to watch this season, because we all know, you know, in today's NHL, you got to score. And you need that high-level elite talent like an Edmonton Oilers or, you know, Colorado from a couple of years ago, Winnipeg, obviously. You need guys that can put pucks in the net. And it looks like they're going to get their fair share of quality scoring chances throughout the season.
John, fast, loud, fun. We heard those 3 words over and over again during training camp, during prospect camp, that the new coaching staff wants fast, loud, fun hockey. Barry Trotz, as a GM, said he wants players that the scouts are going to find that are going to get people out of their seats. They want to see offense. And I think right now what you're seeing is the process that I like to describe that comes with a new coach and a new system of going from having to think about it to it becoming instinctual. John, you mentioned the movement, the speed. Now, this Predators team hasn't moved or converted at that high level or that high a speed of puck movement in quite some time. So it's going to take a little while for them to adapt to it. Now, in the modern NHL, we used to like to take the first 10 games and say, we'll start really judging them after that. But you know how it is, John. Those few points at the beginning of the season lost could ultimately be your doom by the end of the season. So I think they will adjust. The offense will be a lot more fun. I love the stretch pass offense that we've seen when it was successful, especially against Seattle on home ice. I think on home ice, the Preds just all automatically have a little bit more confidence. That might have taken quite the hit last night against the Edmonton Oilers, but against the Kraken, we saw what was possible and what is going to be more routine for them as it becomes more instinctual. The less they have to think about these plays, the speed of the plays are going to come to them. They're going to be able to convert at a better level. After all, Philip Forsberg yet to put a goal up, and sometimes he starts off slow, but we know he's going to finish with a pile of goals by the end of the season, and the same can be said for several other Predators. Colton Sissons is not going to be the leading scorers. Colton Sissons, the most respect in the world, maybe the most reliable veteran in Predators franchise history. He comes in every day, puts his skates on, ties them tight, goes out there and just conducts business. You need a hard face-off one, you need a big body check thrown. Colton Sissons now chipping in goals whenever he can. He's just truly the ultimate Predator right now at this point in franchise history.
Charlie, you mentioned some of the new guys. Ryan O'Reilly, I really like the signing of him. I like the fact that he's an experienced guy, won a Stanley Cup, won a Conn Smythe. He brings a lot of leadership to the table. What intangibles does he bring, and also Nyquist as well?
Ryan O'Reilly, I think, is so interesting because we all know at center, Ryan Johansson was a staple in the lineup for several years. Matt Duchene also typically a center, but had played a lot of wing with this national Preds team because of the Kyle Turris debacle. But O'Reilly, what does he bring? He brings experience. And for the national Preds, when you look down the middle, when you have Glass and Novak following O'Reilly in the lineup, I would stick those two players to O'Reilly as many hours of the day as is humanly possible. Learn when to go to bed. Learn when to get up. Learn when to hit the gym. Learn how Ryan O'Reilly has become one of the most successful two-way centers in the NHL of this entire generation. I truly believe he was not just brought here to improve his line mates that are currently Philip Forsberg and Juuso Parson, which, by the way, I really like that combination and think they should allow some time to marinate together because I think they can put up a lot of points together. But O'Reilly makes the younger players around him better. He teaches them how to be a veteran. He is a perfect example. And I'm not saying any of the players that are no longer with this franchise aren't good mentors and good examples, but I don't think you'll find Ryan O'Reilly inviting the rookies over to chip and putt in the backyard at 2:30 in the morning. O'Reilly is truly a veteran's veteran who has a championship pedigree, and now he brings that to Nashville. Nyquist, just like the way he goes about his business, good, solid veteran. He doesn't have a lot to say, and listen, if he gets the puck on his stick, he's going to throw it at the net. He's going to work hard out there, and that's another example, I think, of what Barry Trotz was seeking when he went out there in free agency. Schenn, unfortunately, the only example we have for Schenn as far as the free agent signing, first game did not look good against Tampa and was injured in that game as well. Now going to be out possibly 4 to 6 weeks. So that definitely puts a cramp in anything that Barry Trotz might have been thinking about making a move here early in the season. There were some rumors about possibly making a move with the Vancouver Canucks, but now with Schenn being out for sure for a while, that's going to limit making any maneuvers on the defensive side of things.
Charlie, I'm up against the break. Can you hang?
Of course I can, JB, as long as you need me, and far beyond that, too.
You are the best. All right, stay put. More with Crazy Charlie Saunier from the Renegades of Puck podcast coming your way next. We continue our conversation with Crazy Charlie Saunier, the leader of the Renegades of Puck podcast, and, of course, does a lot for... On News Channel 5 Plus, we continue our conversation with Crazy Charlie Saunier, the leader of the Renegades of Puck podcast, and of course does a lot for hockey in and around not only Middle Tennessee but all over the Mid-South. Charlie, great to have you on as always. You mentioned the Predators off to a 1-3 start, and I thought last night, even though, again, I thought the Preds generated some offense, put some shots on goal last night, but to me, last night, the Edmonton Oilers kind of took the Preds out to the learning tree a little bit. That this is the difference when you have high-end elite talent versus a bunch of really good guys that work hard. You know, the high-end elite talent, more often than not, is going to be more successful. What did you make of last night's game, and what do you make of the Predators' 1-3 start so far?
I say, John, we have to take this moment and acknowledge them. The Edmonton Oilers are truly the offensive juggernaut of the NHL. It is, I guess I should consider myself privileged and lucky to witness such a thing in this era and generation of hockey. But to see McDavid and Draisaitl out there on the ice, then you add Nugent Hopkins to it. Just not 9 points between that trio last night. Joel Bouchard out there on the blue line for all the funnies we had before the game about Tyson Barrie saying, well, they're not going to score anymore because I'm not passing them the puck anymore. That was really funny until about 12 minutes after 7 local time at Bridgestone Arena. They make it look so easy. I mean, Connor McDavid had an accidental spinorama where he still went through 3 Predators and a stick check at the end. It's truly, of this age, it's something I've never seen before, and it's it's tough for the Nashville Predators. But to bring it circle back around to the Preds, now that I've shown proper, I think, respect to the Oilers, for the Predators, it's hard to throw them into this early season schedule, but it might also be, for the long run, one of the best things that can happen. John, think of the row that they've had to go down already this year. All former playoff teams from last season. Opening in Tampa Bay, one of the best teams of the last decade. Truly professionals among professionals in the sport right now. The same can be said about going into Boston and facing off against the Bruins, coming home and facing off against the dynamic Edmonton Oilers. But you got Seattle Kraken, who are a playoff team, and you took the Seattle Kraken to the woodshed for a full 60 minutes. So you've shown it's possible. It's not going to be easy going into Madison Square Garden to face off against the Rangers next. But then coming back, San Jose, Vancouver, Toronto, 3 games at home. The schedule yo-yo finally ends after this trip to MSG. That's another thing for this early season Preds team that's testing them. 1 on the road, 1 at home. 1 on the road, 1 at home. It's tough to get in the groove. And John, you know this as well as every other Predators fan knows. Starting right at the beginning of November, and it comes up every year, that CMA road trip, that it seems like Saros's numbers are always dipped just before that road trip. It seems like Forsberg is struggling just before that road trip. The Preds are not quite what we want them to be right out of the gate. And they go on that long road trip and they play those late night games that don't get the most coverage. And they come back seemingly to be a different. Now, this is a different coach. It's different players, but I hope it's the same result that it's always been, because while a lot of differences this year, I'm seeing a lot of similarities and trends between other starts to season. Forsberg starting slow, Saros starting a little bit slow, the Preds underperforming offensively just a little bit, but I have high hopes for this team. And John, you mentioned the craziest thing of all, to watch a team just get obliterated on their home rink, but somehow walk away feeling like, it wasn't that bad. And here's why it wasn't that bad, John. It's because the Nashville Predators never gave up in that game. They generated 42 shots on net, and when it was 4-1, Ryan O'Reilly hits the post. I'm pretty sure they had to replace that post. I don't know that I've ever seen a post hit so hard in my life. But John, they're right there. They're an inch away from making it 4-2, and I don't know. There was a little upswell in the crowd at 4-1. They make it 4-2. The terrible goaltending of Edmonton comes back to bite them again, and who knows what happens down the stretch. But that's why losing by such a lopsided score didn't feel as bad as maybe some of those 2-0 and 3-1 losses from early last season. It's because they didn't give up. They continued battling, working hard, and right down to the very end.
Have hooked up with, I just invented a word, Crazy Charlie Saunier from the Renegades of Puck hockey podcast. Of course, one of the leading voices for hockey here in Nashville, Middle Tennessee, and all of the Mid-South. Charlie, before we went to break, we were talking about some players that you feel for the Predators need to step up this year. I gave you Dante Fabro, the defenseman. You had some nice things to say about him. What say you about players that really need to step up this year for the Preds?
I honestly think, John, what it comes down to is there's a lot of fringe players that this Predators organization has really brought along with them the last 2 seasons. I I mentioned Cole Smith, I mentioned Kiefer Sherwood, and at times these players have shown that they certainly can play at a very high level, but can they do that consistently? Can they do that throughout the full 82-game schedule? And so far, some of these bottom six forwards are not showing that I think they can do that at a competitive level. So I think the National Predators might be looking to move off a couple of those. There's no doubt they're starting to develop more players at the level below. At Milwaukee, we saw the Admirals make a run to the Calder Cup final last year before unfortunately falling to the Coachella Valley Firebirds. But for the National Predators, I think right now they're pretty set on what they want to do with their top six. I think that they're going to be making more adjustments to the bottom six wingers, and whichever one of those players wants to step up and seize their position on this roster, I think they'll be able to. I'm most excited about a player like Luke Evangelista's development. I think that he has some tremendous upside, and anybody who announces their arrival into the NHL by putting a shoulder straight into Evgeny Malkin and knocking him flat on his back, that tells me that is a kid that is physically ready to play at this level, and we saw fits and spurts offensively that he can certainly go. So I'm looking forward to a lot of development in the bottom six of this Nashville Predators team this year, and that's where I think that players need to step up and seize their opportunities. As you know, John, there never seems to be enough top six forwards, but for some reason there always seems to be more than enough bottom six forwards. So the Preds are probably going to have to make some tough decisions on some players that maybe might be more cult fan base friendly than actually necessary in the lineup moving forward.
All right, speaking of tough decisions, Charlie, let's say things don't go well this year and we're sitting there at the trade deadline. You know, is there a possibility that a Saros could be moved, or maybe another player I'm not even thinking about? What do you think Barry Trotz's strategy will be if it's pretty clear by the trade deadline, and we got a long way to go before that, I understand, but if it's pretty clear that this team is not going to be a playoff contending team, what do you think Trotzy might consider doing?
Let me just throw out some things that could be possibilities. What would be considered? No idea. This will be Barry Trotz's first trade deadline, first full season as a GM, but starting from the back end, working our way out. UC Saros was already rumored to be on the trading block last year. We know that Askarov is coming along in the pipeline. He is not ready at an NHL level. So this is not something that the Nashville Predators could make that move and go straight to him. It would have to be a stopgap with a Kevin Lankinen or someone else picked up in the meantime. But Saros has been rumored to be on the block before, so there's no reason to think that that could not happen again moving forward. On the defensive side of things, two experienced defensemen. I don't think that Barry finishes the season with the Nashville Predators. He's on the last year of his contract. He's an experienced puck-moving defenseman, and you know, John, around trade deadline, teams are typically willing to overpay for a veteran puck-moving defenseman. Now, a lot of people are going to say the same thing about Ryan McDonagh, but Ryan McDonagh is starting to get to that point where I don't know if he wants to be moved any longer, and he might want to just finish up here. The captain, Roman Josi, is where you'll hear rumors from the outside, but I don't know that you'll see any rumors or movement coming from the inside. On the forward, things are always going to be hot around Philip Forsberg. He's a one-time 40-goal scorer, and there are going to be teams out there willing to make offers. Now, the season is going to have to go really, really bad and really far down south for the Nashville Predators to, I think, move any of those three major parts. McDonagh, if he is interested in moving to another city, might be. Barry, I think, is going to be traded by the end of the season. The Nashville Predators, I think, are going to mostly try to ride this thing out this season, John, and give Andrew Brunette at least 1 year to figure it out. Same thing with Barry Trotz, same thing with the cohesion of the group itself moving forward. I think that Roman Josi in the long run is truly the only untouchable, and of course, now that I said that, I probably jinxed myself by putting it on record, but I think that the captain, Roman Josi, I think that it comes from David Poile down to Barry Trotz throughout the organization that they want Roman Josi to finish his career, because it's going to be a Hall of Fame career here in Nashville. Drafted here, played his entire career here, retires here, goes to the Hall of Fame in a Preds sweater. I think that that's something the organization very much covets, as long as, of course, it's possible moving forward. He certainly signed long-term to the organization.